expectation versus surprise, predictability versus uncertainty, the feeling of being in motion versus being stationary, the feeling of arrival versus the feeling of departure, passive behavior versus active behavior, calming moments versus dramatic moments, tension versus resolution, consonance versus dissonance. What does all of this stuff have to do with becoming a better guitar player? Let's break it down in today's video. When you listen to a piece of music, you really only have to answer one simple question. Do I like it? And the answer to that question comes from your ears and your emotions, which work together to make a judgment about the quality of the music that you are listening to. For me personally, the whole idea of what makes music good is very subjective, because music is an art form, and any opinions that I have about the quality of the music that I'm listening to are based on how well that music fits or maybe doesn't fit into the spectrum of my own personal tastes. We all have a unique background as far as listening experiences, and I'm constantly fascinated by the variety of individual perspectives that I encounter when I talk to people about how they experience and listen to music. One of the fundamental principles that I really try to ingrain on all of my personal private students is that you should never apologize for liking what you like. If a certain kind of music resonates with you emotionally, that's enough. You don't owe anyone an explanation. In fact, I would probably take that a step further and say that to be a good musician, you actually have to form some very strong opinions about what you like and what you don't like. Because in the long run, that's going to help you to understand yourself and your tastes all that much better. So think of it this way. As a listener, your ears and your emotions are constantly searching for sounds that are familiar to you, while also trying to make sense out of sounds that are unfamiliar to you. So as you experience a piece of music, you're actively listening for musical sounds that you enjoy, which I like to define as sounds that meet your expectations, while at the same time, your ears are trying to figure out these new sounds that maybe you haven't experienced before. I like to call that sounds that defy your expectations. After 4 decades of playing and studying music, I've found that most emotionally powerful music has an internal sense of movement or development that comes from the intentional use of these two contrasting elements: musical sounds that your ears expect to hear, which create resolution, versus musical sounds that surprise your ears and create a feeling of tension. And it's this ongoing real-time interaction between resolution and tension that's found in great music of every style and of every genre. Where things get tricky is when you start to realize that every guitar player and every musician, and indeed everyone in the audience, has their own personal level of tolerance when it comes to expectation versus surprise, which means every single person experiences and reacts to tension and resolution in a different way. And a huge part of your own personal journey as a developing musician is trying to discover for yourself what is your own personal threshold for the musical application of tension and resolution. One additional thing to be aware of with this concept is that defying expectations is a double-edged sword. You can defy musical expectations in a positive way musically, which will be interpreted by your ears and your emotions as a pleasant surprise or exceeding your expectations. But you can also defy musical expectation in a negative way musically, which means that your ears and your emotions are going to view this as an unpleasant surprise or just not living up to your expectations. I give all of my private students this silly little emoji chart to help them visualize this concept a little bit better. We have resolution with sounds that meet our expectations. We have positive tension from exceeding our expectations. And then we have negative tension, which is sounds that don't quite meet our expectations. And of course, at the bottom, we have musical sounds that just flat out confuse us. I like to call this no man's land, where we say, what is happening here? If you are a member of our Facebook group, I will post a link to a PDF file of this little graphic if you would like to download that. The concept of tension versus resolution is usually expressed in the musical terms of consonance versus dissonance. A basic definition of consonance might be musical sounds that work well together. We could take that description a little bit further and say that consonance is agreement between two different musical actions or compatibility between two different musical elements. Dissonance, on the other hand, is musical sounds that don't work well together. And we could take that description a little bit further by saying that dissonance is tension that comes from a combination of inconsistent musical actions, or a disagreement between inconsistent musical elements. Music is filled with many shades of consonance and dissonance to explore, and as a student of music, you are responsible for learning and practicing many different yet equally important dimensions of musical behavior when it comes to this whole spectrum of expectation versus surprise. Many of the concepts and techniques that Byron and I will be covering in future videos will cover a single musical dimension of sound or a single aspect of musical behavior, but you never want to lose sight of what the real big picture is. And this is the second fundamental principle that I really try to impress on my private students, which is this: the framework of expectation versus surprise can be used to help define how you experience music, and more importantly, how you decide to create it. The specific ways that you decide to use these elements of tension and resolution will help to shape your individual personality as a player. If you spend some time really exploring this stuff in depth, you will inevitably come to the same conclusion that I've come to, which is when you strike just the right balance between contrasting musical elements, the end result is emotionally powerful music. And the journey that you are taken on when you experience the sound of those contrasting elements, that's how great music tells us a story. And this observation is true for not only any style or any genre, but this observation is kind of the driving philosophy behind this channel and the type of content that we want to be able to create. I had mentioned earlier that when you listen to a piece of music, you only have to answer one simple question: do I like it? Once you've answered that question, then you have to ask yourself a slightly more challenging question, which is why? And to be able to answer the question of why, you need to answer that in detail, which means that you need a diverse vocabulary of musical terminology to really express what is it about music that makes you feel connected to it. Telling me that you like a song because it sounds good, well, that's not going to cut it, okay? If you tell me that you like a song because of how it makes you feel emotionally, that's a little bit better. But if you tell me that you like a song because of specific types of musical behavior that you can accurately describe in detail, that's the best, okay? The harsh reality for any guitar player or any musician who wants to get better is that there is a certain amount of specific language that you just have to know to describe various forms of musical activity. When I talk about things like melody and harmony and tonality and tempo and rhythm and dynamics and tone color and timbre and texture and register, all of these things are pieces of vocabulary that I use so that I can have a nuanced and meaningful conversation about music. Now, with all of that said, the third fundamental principle that I really try to get my students to embrace is what I think is the most important one, which is this: sounds and emotions come first, and the language comes second. Okay, all of the musical terminology in the world doesn't mean anything if you can't hear it and feel it. Music is a listening art and an emotional art just as much as it is a performing art. Nobel Prize-winning author Leo Tolstoy once said that music is the shorthand of emotion. And if there is one thing that you're going to take away from this video, it's this: as a student of music, it is up to you and you alone to answer those two basic questions. Do I like it, and why? If you have any questions or comments, drop them below. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to this channel, and share this video if you enjoyed it. You can also find us over on Facebook, where we have a private group for Dimecast students. We post additional video lesson content over there. You should definitely check that out. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.